The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the Podcast. And because the games come thick and fast over the Easter weekend, and we all have lives away from recording these podcasts, of course, we will lift up the curtain slightly and let you know that today we might be previewing Sunderland's clash with Blackburn Rovers on Bank Holiday Monday, but we are in fact recording before the fixtures on Good Friday. So we're assuming that they won't make a huge amount of difference, but with your hindsight as you listen in, you can let us know how right or wrong we were. And before we introduce our guest who's going to talk all things Blackburn, I'm going to introduce Gavin Henderson, a familiar voice.
Hello, mate. How are we?
Hello. Easter weekend. It's normally kind of a frantic thing, but it's a bit weird this time, isn't it?
Yeah. With Sunderland not having very much to play for, I'm not looking at these games and thinking, oh, bloody hell, this could be definitive. I'm looking at them and thinking, please just get through the next 4 days without getting any injuries. That would be nice. So, yeah, it's going to be still very interesting for us. Another home game. It'll actually probably be, I'm not too sure how many home games we've got left. We've only got 4 games left, so it'll be my last home game of the season, which is sad unless obviously we've got the playoffs, but last official home game of the season because I'm best man at a wedding on the day of the QPR game. So I'm going to try and look forward to it. Hopefully the sun's shining and with it being Easter, maybe we'll be in the pub nice and early and probably a bit more merry than usual. But yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you'll be doing your job as best man with your phone just to the side watching the match and getting updates.
The last time I was at a wedding when Sunderland played was when we beat Southampton 5-0 last season. And through the ceremony, everyone's going back and forth, going, it's 1-0, it's 2-0, 3-0. Can you believe it? 4-0. And we were all season ticket holders at this wedding and missed the best game of the season. So I'm hoping the QPR game's the same. That's going to be about 7 or 8-0.
Well, if that one's the same, you can organise and should just kind of get crash another wedding for the home leg of the playoffs.
Yeah, and, make sure we win.
Do the same. That's it. And we need someone to talk about Blackburn Rovers, and we have just the man from BRFCS and the 4,000 Holes podcast. We have Ian Herbert. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, chaps.
Yes, and I know this isn't a good thing to say on a podcast where nobody's seeing the video from this. They've just got audio, but we can see you, dolled up in your 4,000 Holes and BRFCS gear there. But I mean, just the names of it. I mean, can you explain where those names came from and what the acronym is?
Yeah, BRFCS is Blackburn Rovers Football Club supporters, basically. It's a website that's been around for just coming up, well, not quite 30 years yet. And it's a site that was started by, I think, the original owners as a response to the club's official forum. So it gave us an ability for us supporters to say what we really thought without the comments being censored or moderated. That's probably its origin story. 4,000 Holes is the fanzine that started back in the day in the late 80s And I don't own issue 1. But I first one I bought was issue 2, and I thought this is fun because it was at the time when all the music fanzines and all that sort of stuff was starting. I thought I quite like this, and I sent in an article thinking there's no way they'll ever publish this, and they did. I thought, oh, this is cool. So I pretty much then was a consistent contributor. I think, like most fanzines, it then struggled and it lost its way, and it passed through different editorial hands. And then the current editor, Scott, he's one of the directors that owns the BRFCS site, and we sort of said, well, let's bring everything together. It makes sense for the site to be a sort of like a digital archive of the fanzine. A lot of people who write for the fanzine also contribute to the podcast and vice versa. So there was a good overlap of ideas there. So it's given us a brand for the podcast that ties into the fanzine, and it means that we can promote both. Within the page of the fanzine and on the podcast, which is quite nice. 4,000 Holes. I'm looking at you two chaps. I don't think you're old enough to get the musical reference. Is that right?
It depends. If you come out with a musical reference, I might tell you.
So it's from the Beatles. From the Sgt. Pepper album. The last track is called "A Day in the Life."
Yeah.
And John Lennon had read, I think it was the Daily Express that morning, and he'd seen an article about there being 4,000 potholes in Blackburn, Lancashire. And so that inspired the lyric. So the lyric of the song, you need to go and stream from Pepper now. The 4,000 holes in Blackburn, Lancashire. Now I know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. It's kind of like the line. So when the fanzine came out, that was probably only 20 years after that song had emerged. But now, of course, we're many, many more years on. So I can usually tell by the ages and the demographic of people that I speak to as to whether they get it or not. And some of the older presenters will laugh and chuckle and say, that's really good. And others will just go, 4,000 hours? Sorry? No? Yeah, explain, as you guys just have. So that's the origin story.
Brilliant. Well, you're talking about 1996 just starting on. I mean, that's for most people, that's the start of the internet, or before the internet started for a lot of people.
Yeah, the guys that ran the site were, I'm not being unkind here, I mean in the most complimentary way possible, were IT geeks and well ahead of their time. Yeah. So I think, setting up a forum at that time was really quite imaginative. One of the early people that was involved in the site was actually recruited by the club. They were so impressed with the work that he's done. But then over time, football clubs then started to use the same template for their websites. I think there's a central company that sort of like ran them, certainly across the EFL. And so that kind of like fell by the wayside. But we've been running it since 2017. We've owned it since 2020. So we've got a good few years under our belt now, and it's a hobby that can expand to fill the time available. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's brilliant. I mean, Gav, I was going to say to you, 1996, I'm sure that's when Sunderland came up with their first website. Can you remember that hit the net? Can you remember that stuff?
I've actually, and I shared some of this stuff with you lot privately, but I found a couple of years later, I found a scrapbook which I made when I was a kid from the promotion season in 1999, and my dad's mate blew that up so that I didn't lose it, basically. So he blew it up onto, he scanned it all in and put it all in a folder, which I've still got. And in that are print-offs from the club website at the time. And I'll share them with you at some point, Chris. I might put them on the socials and stuff, because it's just very interesting seeing what the websites were like back in the 90s as compared to now. But I've still got some of that stuff archived, and I'm probably the only person who does.
Yeah, but it's brilliant because obviously, Gav, you're main man, setting up Roker Report. But just like Ian was saying there, that came from you growing up with, Love Supreme and Sunderland fanzines from the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah. There's obviously big influence on even today, and even still now, Love Supreme is still going strong. Been in place since the back end of the 80s. We've got as part of our writing team now, Nick Wiseman, who set up the Ethics fanzine, which is still referenced today. It's a Hope I Can't Stand. I used to write for a different fanzine many years ago alongside a guy called Jim Fox, who started the Wise Men Say fanzine back in the 80s. So a lot of this stuff, which it's gone now. You're not going to get as it used to be. People selling brand new fanzines that they printed off at work, trying to get the opinion of the fans out there. And Ian standing clutching theirs, and it's great to see that the original ones, a lot of them are still good, but in terms of newer stuff, it's been replaced by podcasts and social media and things, and that's quite sad actually, because I still like to hold a copy of something and read it. And I mean, it shows how times have changed, but that influence still lives on. And I'm glad, the likes of Love Supreme and the likes of 4,000 Holes, I'm glad they're still going because it must be a labour of love for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think the interesting thing for me is BRFCS.com started off purely as a message board and remained that for many, many, many years until we sort of took it over and we, dare I use the phrase, sexed it up a little bit and brought it kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And I thought when social media kicked off, well, who will use a message board? Who will go to a forum? But now I've reconciled the dynamic is probably it's analogous to going into a pub near the ground after the game. And you want to download what you've just seen and you want to compare your thoughts and opinions with those around you. And so people dive into the forum after a game and for 24 hours after a game, because you've got global people going in sort of saying, I'm just logging on at 6 a.m. here, what was it like? Da-di-da-di-da. And it keeps people in touch. And I think we provide a vital sort of mental health sort of like charity service, because I often wonder if people didn't download an R forum and get rid of all that angst, how would it manifest itself? So, yes, I think we're with the unspoken emergency service for Blackburn Rovers fans.
Yeah, well, I've still got all my Love Supremes in a box, which I pull out every so often. So Ian, how far does your love of Blackburn Rovers go back?
It goes back a long way to childhood. I think the first match I was taken to was in 1969. I tried to trace it back based on anecdotes from relatives. And we alighted on Hull City at home at Ewood Park in 1969 because we played them the week after my 5th birthday. So it was, I can only presume it was part of my 5th birthday package of celebrations. The story goes that there was at the previous home game, my cousins had been over from Manchester and they needed to be occupied for the afternoon, so they were taken to Rovers and I wanted to go. And apparently the argument went along the lines of, you're too young, you won't understand it, you'll get bored very quickly, you won't enjoy it, so we're not taking it. Well, all of those things are still true. I don't enjoy it, I still get bored. But apparently I kicked off big style and insisted, and so they sort of reluctantly said, well, okay, it's your birthday, we'll take you to the next home game. And then that was it. I've been there ever since. So the first season I supported, we got relegated to the 3rd division, which should have been a warning sign. But I hung on in there. I've seen us relegated to the 3rd division on multiple occasions since as well. But I mean, amongst that, of course, was the Premier League win and the League Cup win. So that's made it all worthwhile. Well,
that's it. You waited 20 years for that promotion under Kenny Dalglish, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. When I first started, I could not have conceived that Rovers would get back to the 1st division, let alone win it. And obviously it was a unique set of circumstances that gave us the ability to compete for 4 or 5 years. Football has changed so much, even in the last 5 years, never mind the last 30. But they can never take those memories away from me, I think is the saying. And I certainly enjoyed the League Cup in Cardiff as well. That was a terrific day out. So it's there.
Yeah. Well, you said football's changed. Do you think that that kind of Jack Walker era was maybe the first part of that? That was the first time that had really happened.
Yeah, I think so, because you had 3 owners at the time that were quite high profile. You had Sir Jack Heywood at Wolves, you had Lionel Pickering at Derby, and you had Jack Walker at Rovers, who were all trying to do the same thing. And Jack Walker pulled off the dream. The other 2 had success to varying degrees, but nothing on the scale that we did. But I think what it did was it was the last punch up of a town team. I don't think a town team. Well, I can't conceive, unless there's a Super League that creams off the sort of like the top 6 or 8 teams in the country. I can't see that the likes of a Crystal Palace or a Bournemouth or a Brighton are ever going to challenge for the Premier League title. So yeah, the game has changed. The economics of the game have changed. The TV coverage now, the way that everything about it has changed. But at its core, there's still that 90 minutes of visceral engagement with what's going on the pitch. And you've given the game away. We're recording the day after Arsenal beat Real Madrid, and I'm far from an Arsenal fan. But I was glued to that last night. It was just compelling views. Now, forget all the TV money around it, the branding and the merchandise and the kits. That game encapsulated everything that, missed penalty, disallowed penalty. Are they going to do the comeback? Everybody was sort of like teetering. Even with 6 or 7 minutes to go, I thought, if Real Madrid get one here, I wouldn't put it past them to get two. And if they get two, God knows what it must have been like for an Arsenal fan watching that.
Yeah, that's it. And I was just thinking, Gav, I was trying to think, are you too young to witness most of that Blackburn title win back in the day?
Oh yes, far too young. I'll have been 5-year-old. Yeah, I was a baby.
Makes me angry.
But obviously, I've seen plenty of it because it gets played over again on TV and has for the last 20 odd years, hasn't it? So, it obviously it was a very different time in football because that was the day when your local businessman could afford to take a team to the big time, and it's changed completely. And you do kind of long for those days to come back in many respects because it allowed clubs like Blackburn to dream. And in another time, if Sunderland had been maybe pointed in a different direction, that could have been us. But those days are getting further and further away from us. You talk about Arsenal and Real Madrid in the Champions League, and what it takes to get to that point is an awful lot of money, and a lot of it's coming from places that you'd maybe like to turn a blind eye to. You look at Newcastle and what's going on there, and their fans are most certainly turning a blind eye to where their money comes from, or at least being blissfully ignorant. And, that's unfortunately, that's what it takes. And for the likes of ourselves in Blackburn to get to that point, it's going to take a few minor miracles to get that far again. And I think it's sad that kids these days, other than the exception of Leicester, 7-8 years ago, kids these days are probably unlikely to see that sort of resurgence of a smaller club to the very top of the game. And it's a shame. And unfortunately, I never got to live through much of that because I was probably still running around the back lane in my Sunderland shirt, getting it all clicked and tell off for my mum for climbing the walls and that. I wasn't paying too much attention to the Premier League.
Yeah. Well, we can all hang on to that Leicester City win, and Ian's proudly sat there in front of Alan Shearer's shirt in the background. But we can
not hold that against them, Chris.
Well, we can just cling on to the fact that was Alan Shearer's only success in football, really.
Well, that's
where we can. So, but back to Blackburn in recent years, 13th year outside of the Premier League this year. And I want to go back to that relegation all those years ago, because to be honest, Blackburn have kind of disappeared out of the kind of national view, I suppose, after that. But they were so much in the news that during that relegation, the way Venkys did things with the managers and how they dealt with people. How long did that really kind of play out in the end? And how did that actually put the club back a few years?
It's still playing out, if the truth be told.
Yeah.
We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago where we delved into the financials because the latest club accounts were out. And they sort of indicated that Rovers had received something of the order of £300 million worth of investment from Venkys since they started their ownership. So if you'd have got talked to the 2010 me and said, these new owners are coming in and they're going to put £300 million into your club. Really? Wow. This is going to be great. Isn't it going to be amazing? And what they've delivered for that is just a series of off-the-field shambolic appointments. And now it's got to the point of neglect, basically. So it's kind of like the club has been told that it must run itself as a self-financing operation, which if you can sell Adam Wharton and Sammy Smodics every year, that's terrific. But we can't. And and now we've sold them. Where's the next sale going to come from that's going to enable us to be self-financing? So if they stick to their guns and hold by that mantra, then there's only one direction the club is going, because with our budget and our gets, we're probably closer to Rotherham United than Manchester United. So there's been something of a fans campaign that's kicked off over recent weeks, because for the second time at the end of the January transfer window in 2 years, we've lost a manager. So I was a massive John Dahl Thomason fan. I thought his mindset and his attitude and his ambition was way beyond that of anybody else at the club. And he was trying to drag the club kicking and screaming into the future. And I think he realised that he was pushing water uphill and basically tried to get out once the promises that had been made to him weren't being fulfilled. We absolutely looked out on John Eustace because he got off to a pretty torrid start. But this season, he's been sort of I guess it's alchemy almost, how he's managed to get performances out of the squad that we've got and get us into the playoffs. I mean, we were fifth at the time that he left, but he thought his chances and his career could be better going to a relegation-threatened club. Yeah. So that speaks volumes to me about what must be going on behind the scenes. We've got half of our squad are either out of contract or going back to their parent clubs in the summer, and we've got no money to spend. Yeah. So that suggests that we're just going to be scouring Premier League academies, trying to bring youngsters in. We're going to be promoting kids from our academy who probably aren't ready, and then scrapping for the likes of free transfers. Yeah. So, with a name that will resonate with you guys is Danny Bart. Yeah. So 2 years ago, we tried to sign him, I think when he was leaving Norwich, and he wanted a 2-year deal, and Rovers wouldn't offer him a 2-year deal. They'd only offer him a 12-month deal. So he said, I'll go maybe, did he join Norwich from you guys? Yeah. So leaving you guys and going to Norwich. We wouldn't offer him a 2-year deal, but 12 months later, we offered him a 12-month deal, and we'll almost certainly offer him a 12-month extension this summer. So there is a massive disconnect in the logic of the profile of the players that we're trying to sign. On the one hand, we get these statements coming from Rudy Gestede along the lines of, we want to develop our academy, we want to polish some diamonds, that's the future of the club. And then we go and sign 33 and 34-year-olds on a 1-year deal, or we bring in kids from Liverpool, Manchester City and Brighton for 9 months, then send them back. Well, sorry, Rudy, those two things don't coalesce. It doesn't make sense. So I fear for the future of the club. I think next season could be incredibly hairy. I think the run of our form over the last 18 or 19 games has been that of an absolute rock-solid relegation team. And quite often you see that, don't you? Season ends and then a club struggles to sort of like get going again the following season, when you also bear in mind that we're going to have half the squad that needs to be reintegrated and a new manager trying to impose a style of play. The warning klaxons are sounding, I'm afraid.
Yeah, just you mentioned the form there, and I'm just looking in the last 12 games, Blackburn are second bottom table.
Well, I think if you do 18 or 19, we managed to drop down to bottom. So, Derby County have now started to pick up form, and Swansea have, and they've sort of like jumped above us. Even Plymouth are winning games for God's sake.
Well, this season's one hell of a story, and we'll kind of get into that. But just quickly, because you mentioned John Dahl Thomason, finished 7th and 8th and just missed out on the playoffs. And then there was that season after that, because for those 2 seasons, I felt Blackburn were really strong. And
it was a season and a half. So the first season we missed out by goal difference, and it was his second season, round about November, December, when things started to go awry, because some of the players had decided they didn't like him or didn't like his tactics. And so we're sort of like, players get injuries, don't they? They get injuries when they don't like the manager and stuff like that. And form sort of like tailed off. And reading between the lines, I can only surmise that he went to the board and sort of said, right, well, we need to get rid of him, and him, because they won't play for me, and or they're not good enough, and we need to get replacements in. And that didn't happen. And so he sort of said, well, what do you expect me to do? I've demonstrated that I'm a good coach. You're not giving me the tools to do the job. You've sold, you didn't. You're about to sell the leading goal scorer. Kind of like, what on earth can I possibly do here? So he then left in February, and then 12 months on. So with less than 12 months in the managerial position, John Eustace came to the same conclusions.
Yeah. Well, we'll get it. Like I said, we'll get into the roller coaster of what's actually gone on this season, because I couldn't believe it when I started looking at the runs of results. But going back to the summer, you said, John Eustace was there in place. You sold your top goal scorer to Ipswich. So where were Blackburn Rovers fans' heads? What was the expectation?
We did a pre-season prediction pod, and I think most people were sort of saying between 16th and 22nd. So we did. I think we did have one person who said 23rd. In fairness, most people were, this is going to be a relegation scrap, but we've probably just about got enough to keep our heads above water. And the way the table is very congested in the middle of the championship. Yeah. It's not inconceivable that we could still end up finishing 15th or 16th. It comes to fruition. If we'd have flipped the season round and we'd have had a rotten start to the season and we'd have ended with 6 wins in a row, season tickets would have been flying off the shelves and we'd all be looking forward to next season, of course. But that's just not the way that we do things. We have our traditional, it's the end of January, lads, right, down tools, get the holiday brochures out. Yeah.
Well, this is what Cav touched on, because we need to get into this because, it needs some explaining really, because when I was looking, started unbeaten for the first 7 games. Then you had a run of 5 defeats in 7 before that was before winning 6 on the bounce.
6 on the bounce, yes.
This had Blackburn 5th. At the time I looked at this, 1 place and 3 points behind Sunderland with a game in hand, and you were just 5 points behind Leeds in second with a game in hand as well. But then, as we've kind of touched on, the wheels completely came off. Run of 2 wins in 11. So what happened for the wheels to suddenly come off after getting into that good position in mid-December?
Well, I think, as always, it's an accumulation of factors. So Rovers have a thin squad. It's lean and mean. I think and the stated aim, and I don't have a problem with that, is to use academy kids and to bring them through and all the rest of it, and that's absolutely fine in and of itself, as long as they're coming on for 10 and 15 minute substitute appearances. They're not expected to run the game. Yeah, when they're making their 4th or 5th first team appearance, because I just think that's unfair. It's a rare talent. Yeah, and Adam Wharton is a once in a generation talent, and to see him walk out the door for the fee that he did, was heartbreaking. But if we hadn't have sold him, we would have run out of cash. I think that's the harsh reality. So we started to, as you do at that time, you start to accrue injuries and suspensions, and players naturally drift in and out of form. So if you were a Leeds or a Sheffield United or whatever, you just go out and spend £10 million on 3 new players in January, and then you bolstered your squad accordingly. So, for instance, we had Lewis Baker on loan from Stoke, a very solid, dependable Championship midfielder, not going to rip up any trees, but not going to let you down, solid performer. He was on the bench, come on for 20, 25 minutes in the game, calm everything down, terrific. He then has to start. And that's okay. So Travis is injured. Baker comes in. He's okay. Doesn't do the role that Travis does quite as well as Travis, but he adds other things to the team. So net on net, we're still okay. But then in January, Stoke City's new manager, of course, Mark Robins, sort of says, we'll bring him back because I think he's quite good. I used to like him when I was at Coventry. So Rovers then go to Plymouth Argyle and sign on a free transfer. Effectively, Plymouth cancelled his contract. Adam Forshaw, who can't get into Plymouth's team. So Plymouth at this time are rock bottom of the division, and we're bringing in a guy who can't get into that team. Eustace then sort of says, we need some defensive cover, and we sign on loan Dion Sanderson, a centre-back from Birmingham City, who can't get into Birmingham City's team, and Birmingham City are in a division below us. Now, Eustace knew Sanderson, and he obviously thought he could get something out of him. And you can understand why that took place. But again, if you're only finding him as cover, then that's fine. But if he's going to have to start games and all the rest of it, there's got to be questions asked. And naturally, injuries started to happen. We'd lost Scott Wharton at the beginning of the season. Hayden Carter then got injured as another centre-back, and so on and so on and so on. And so it got to the point where we were playing players out of position who were knackered. We were promoting kids before they were ready. The goals dried up, and form went off a cliff. So in January, you're hoping, you sort of say, if we can bring 2 or 3 in now, we can sustain this. But this is the 3rd time in 4 seasons that Rovers' season has ended at the end of January. Last season was very much the outlier in the relegation battle, but the previous 3 occasions, we'd been chasing the playoff spot, not recruited in January, not spent any money, and ended up just drifting inexorably downwards. And when we've seen 18 million for Wharton, 10 million for Smodix, and we've got a sell-on fee with David Raya at Arsenal, so that's the best part of 34 million quid coming in. But we sign Adam Forshaw, Dion Sanderson, we give a 12-month contract to Andy Wyman, we give Danny Bart a 1-year deal. That doesn't smack of reinvestment.
I mean, Gav, just listening to all that, I'm just imagining what would have happened if that sort of dropping off a cliff happened at Sunderland.
Yeah, it wouldn't have went down well at all, would it? But I think the reasons have been reasonably explained there. You can totally say why this has happened, and you reflect on Sunderland and the reaction of some of our fans because we got beat on Saturday and we're choosing to we're choosing to take the playoffs and approach the playoffs in a very different manner. When you sort of weigh it up, you just said it. Blackburn, by all intents and purposes, they could have went ahead of Sunderland at some point not too long ago. And look at the gap that we've made between ourselves and Blackburn in that period. I mean, all it does to me, it kind of highlights the season we've had. But you're right. I think if that had been us, and we've sort of been there in the past with owners. I mean, when Ian was talking about the fact that the Venkys have basically given up ploughing money in and have just said, you need to sort this yourselves. It reminds me a lot of Ellis Short, actually, and the way that he plunged us into debt. I mean, it's probably for the best that Blackburn haven't been in the Premier League recently under the Venkys ownership, because you can only imagine the black hole in the finances that would have appeared there. You know what I mean? So obviously, I'm sympathetic, because we've been there before. We've had ownership who've given up, and it's not a nice place to be. And particularly when you've seen your team win Premier Leagues, I think when you reflect back and you go, bloody hell, we're in no man's land here. Yeah. It must be really, really tough. And actually, when you look, you just listed off a load of names of players there, Ian, and taking cast-offs from the likes of Plymouth. You've probably got to sit back and say, bloody hell, some of these managers have actually done a really good job with what they've been given, and maybe we're punching a little bit above our weight at the minute in terms of...
categorically. Yeah. Categorically. I say the vast majority of Rovers fans would have had us down for a relegation battle. And so it looks a bit churlish to sort of say, you're just so entitled, you lot. You've been up there chasing promotion. Okay, you've tailed off now. Well, what do you expect? Well, I think the answer to that is what we expect is owners who care. Owners who actually want to be involved. Now, me personally, I can't speak for the fan base. Me personally, I'd be happy to be in League 2 with an owner that passionately cared about the club and had the best interests of the club at heart, but could only afford to put £1 million a year in. Fine, we'll cut our costs accordingly, but we know that you're doing your damnedest and you're recruiting the best possible people to run the club that you can, that are equally passionate and creative and innovative. Instead, what we've got is apathy. And something one of my fellow contributors said on the podcast, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And what that indifference and that apathy is now seeping out across the fan base. So we've got different generations of support that view our current plight fundamentally differently. So this is kind of like a circle of life. Well, when I started, we had no money. We're in danger of relegation to the third division. Hello. Yeah. Somebody who started supporting Rovers, say, when Venkys bought the club, probably won't have appreciated the relegation from the Premier League in the same way I didn't really appreciate the relegation from the second division to the third division. But they'll have seen us sweep to promotion in the one season went down in 2017-18. They'll have enjoyed going to some away games. They'll have seen some really exciting players like, dare I mention him, Danny Graham and Bradley Dack, who tore that division apart and were heroes for us. And they're sort of saying, well, this is Blackburn Rovers. We're in the Championship and we're not in danger of relegation this season. Everything's fine, isn't it? But for those of us that have seen, it's the line in the James song, if I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. And that's kind of where we are. You can see what it could be, that if you've got people in the boardroom who are passionate, who are innovative, who are creative, who are energetic or enthusiastic, that cascades its way down. And the only person who's demonstrated those qualities in the last few years at Blackburn Rovers was John Dal Thomason. We met him at the training ground, and he sort of said, just tell me about why you guys are here. And we said, we're doing it's a fan takeover game. It's the last home game before Christmas, traditionally low attendances. So what we're doing is we're working with the club to help promote. There's a special ticket, low price ticket offer. We're going to put it on the podcast, and we're down here to talk to you guys and just generally get the message out there. There's going to be events happening before the game in the fan zone. We're going to be doing this. There's going to be a trope. We're going to be raising money for charity. We're going to be And we rattled it all off. He goes, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Why don't we do that every game? And nobody else at Blackburn Rovers thought, why don't we do this every game? But John Dal Thomason did. And I said, John, I've no idea, but we're here. And he was lovely. And I walked away and I said to Roger, I'd walk over broken glass to work for that guy. So just on the basis of the 20 minutes that we've had with him, such charisma. But yet some of the players sort of said, oh, no, he wants us to come in for afternoon training. He wants us to come in on Sunday mornings. I'm not having that. And there was a very, very interesting interview with Sammy Smodics on, I think it's the Tippy Tappy Football podcast, or one of those anyhow, where he sort of said his first 3 months working under John Dal Thomason were the worst 3 months of his career. and he told his agent to get him out in January. He said, I can't work with this guy. Just don't get it at all. Don't understand what he's trying to do. And then he sort of said, but one day it clicked. And he sort of said, oh, right, okay. So I want you to make those runs. I want you to do this. I want you to be in that position. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. And then we turned him into a 30-goal-a-season striker. And he got his £10 million move to Ipswich off the back of John Dal Thomason's coaching. But I suspect that the squad, too many in the squad, thought, nah, it's not for me. Either self-limiting beliefs, I don't think I can ever be that good to play the way that you want us to play, which is eminently possible, or just simply that they just didn't get on with him. So I think John Dal Thomason polarised opinions, but he showed us what we could be, and he showed us how I suppose he's our Marcelo Bielsa, for want of a better word. You've got to take the whole package. You can't just pick and choose the bits. And there are some bits that you don't like, and there are some bits that you do like. Take it or leave it. So yes, I'm a big JDT fanboy.
Yeah, just Bielsa without the bucket, maybe. But it was bizarre actually, because I mean, going back to that run of 2 wins in 11, you'd only dropped to 6th. I mean, by that point you were 14 points behind us. But even after that bad run, you were still in the mix. And then, obviously, I mean, what happened after that? And you've already touched on it. I think opened a lot of people's eyes to what was happening at Blackburn, because when John Eustace left to go to Derby County, who were in the relegation zone, and I know he finished his playing career there, but I think everybody looked at it and went, why has he done that?
Yes.
And I think that basically communicated to the footballing world that, you know, things weren't right at Blackburn Rovers.
Absolutely. I mean, if a guy thinks his prospects are better by dropping down and potentially going down a division, I mean, he's got them playing now. They beat us, of course, naturally.
Yeah.
But if he can keep them up this season, they'll be in a far greater shout for a playoff place than we will next season. There's no doubt about that. He can definitely organise a side. Not the most attractive, but functional, pragmatic football, which to a certain extent is what you need. But the informal coalition of fans that's come together in recent weeks has been around that very point. You know, there are some people sort of saying, oh, you're so entitled, this, that, and the other, the first time you lose a few games. So, well, no, hang on a minute. Last season we nearly got relegated, but we sold out all our away allocations and there was never a hint of a protest because everyone was pulling in the same direction. And we truly wanted the club to stay up, obviously. This season, we're still selling out our away allocations. We're still passionate in our support, but you sort of say, what's the point if the owners aren't remotely engaged in this enterprise? What do they get from owning us? Does Blackburn Rovers spark joy when it's mentioned in the boardrooms at Venkys? I suspect we're not even mentioned. I suspect they don't know when we're playing. So get rid of us. And, you know, and as I said, I personally will take my chances. Yeah, we'll go back to, well, let's be rivals with Accrington Stanley for a few years. But Portsmouth had to drop down to the 4th tier, be owned by the fan trust, and then gradually work their way back up. Wrexham have had the good fortune of their new ownership, and Birmingham City, obviously, similarly. So, you know, but who would buy us? Who would this, that, and the other? Well, it's amazing, isn't it? I don't know who would buy my house until I put it on the market. That's the reality. But Venkys have just never entertained it. I don't understand why. Genuinely don't.
Yeah, I mean, Gav, remember the reaction when Alex Neil went to Stoke and we went absolutely ballistic. Imagine going to, somebody left Sunderland and
Rotherham United or something.
Yeah, exactly, and went to a club in the relegation zone, potentially going down to League One. I mean, but you can imagine the questions we'd be asking if someone did that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of highlights and spotlights the problem at Blackburn is clearly the ownership. You know, you rats leaving a sinking ship is often a term used, isn't it? But it's like, it is a bit like that, you know, because the people inside the club who've got the knowledge of the day to day and what's going on and having to work in the directorship model as Blackburn's head coach does, the same as ours does, that information feeds down from the top. And I mean, I saw it was a couple of weeks ago now, I saw it was an interview with Rudy Gestead, and he was just sat there in this ill-fitting suit, and I'm going, he just doesn't look legit. It looks like a 2-bit operation, and it sounds awful to say that, but
his appointment, let's be absolutely blunt here, his appointment would not have happened with his CV had he not played for the club.
Yeah.
But what experience has he got? I mean, he's apparently, allegedly, if you believe these sorts of things, being groomed as the next CEO. Now, if you're a headhunting company recruiting for any industry other than football, his CV wouldn't stay on your desk longer than 2 seconds because he's just not got any qualifications or experience.
Yeah. And we had all of this, Chris, didn't we, when we dropped into League One, and we had people like Richard Hill in charge of Sunderland's football transfers, and he'd only ever worked at Eastleigh. He had no qualifications to be in charge of a club the size of Sunderland, but he was given that responsibility. The suit didn't fit. It just didn't work. Tony Courton, the same, had been an ex-player of Sunderland, but he'd never worked in a capacity at a football club where he had that much say. He'd been a scout for for Manchester United, and he worked in recruitment at Aston Villa. So we've been there, but we went down to League One and we spent a lot of time there. And I listened to what you're saying about, you would like to drop down if it meant getting your club back to some extent. But it is a tough slog down there as well.
Don't get me wrong. I'd rather stay in the Championship.
Obviously, yeah.
But if you gave me a stark choice, so let's go back to the 1970s. Blackburn Rovers was owned by the local butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and at the end of the season, they'd all have to write a cheque for £10,000 or £15,000 to keep the club afloat. And we used 20-watt light bulbs instead of 100-watt light bulbs. And famously in the Howard Kendall days, we squeezed the tea bags out and dried them out and reused them. That was the level of sort of like cost-cutting that had to take place. But we, as supporters, knew that everybody in that boardroom was pulling in the same direction. That's the difference. And everybody in that boardroom was a local man who had to go out in the community with their own businesses and justify what was going on at the football club. Because you can imagine, if you were trying to sell your product to someone who's a Rovers fan, why should I buy from thee? You're out mucking up bloody club, aren't you? And all this sort of stuff. You can imagine the sorts of conversations that would take place. Whereas I think the tyranny of distance, Venkys are just so far removed from this, and we are so small in their empire that we just don't resonate. We don't create any ripples. And Steve Weigert and Rudy Gestede, why should they create waves? Why should they be difficult employees? They're both amply rewarded for keeping the status quo ticking over. And that's great, but it don't sell season tickets because it doesn't sell dreams.
So what's it going to take to get rid of Venkys then? Because obviously
it's a great question.
It's a question you ask every day.
If anybody can come up with an answer, please send it to me straight away, because I genuinely don't know. I mean, one of the theories is that the only thing that would do it will be an empty ground. But you and I both know that that's not going to happen. You're always going to get a hardcore of supporters who will turn up. For my personal circumstances, I gave up my season ticket when they appointed Owen Coyle, because to me that was just a bridge too far. This relationship is broken. You are taking the pee out of me. I'm not sustaining this. And so my support of Rovers has transformed into, I'll pick 3 or 4 away days, and I'll build something around that away day and make a weekend of it. So, obvious candidates will be sort of like going to places like Swansea, because I've got a mate who lives down there, spend the weekend with him. Bristol, that's always a nice place to go to. I went to Southampton last season, never been there before, and ticking off the new grounds, and maybe go to a handful of home fixtures where I know there's going to be a group of friends or family that's going. You meet up for lunch before and you go to the game. But that blind religion of buying a season ticket, those days are gone. And also, let's never forget, Sky TV. Because you buy a season ticket, which allegedly is for 23 games, and you might find out that you can only attend 16 of them, 15 of them. And you can sit at home on a cold, it's a 2-hour drive there and a 2-hour drive back for me for a home game. Or I can just click the red button and watch it on TV. So there are more and more supporters that are making those decisions based on their own economics and their own household budgets. And I think, attendances next season could be grim. If we get off to a bad start, I think it could be really, really difficult.
Yeah, well, I've just been sat here for the last 5 minutes trying to work out what's wrong with squeezing out tea bags and reusing them.
You've lived in Yorkshire too long.
Well, that's it. I learned from the best down here. But so what came next? Frenchman Valérien Ismaël, and I've probably butchered that because I've listened to Gav try and pronounce all these names for all these years. He'd previously been at Barnsley, West Brom, Watford in England after cutting his teeth in Germany for a few years. I mean, how did that choice go down with the fans? Because it seems like it's one of those championship managers who, he's on the merry-go-round.
Yes,
he goes to those clubs. But were there any other names? Was there one that the fans wanted?
I suppose the most shiny and attractive one that was mentioned was Gary O'Neill, on the basis of, he'd done a good job at Bournemouth, he'd done a good job at Wolves for the large part, and he had that incredibly exciting Monday Night Football on Sky, didn't he, where he demonstrated his tactical awareness, shall we say, but couldn't translate that into results at Wolves. But he was the shiny one that's kind of like, well, if we can demonstrate that we can bring a manager down who last managed a Premier League club, maybe we're serious about that. And again, the rumours do the rounds, don't they? A mate of a mate of a mate of a mate said that he went for interview and he wanted some assurances about budget and the future of the academy, and he wasn't given those, so he said, this isn't for me, and he pulled out of the race. Other people sort of say he was never even interviewed. So, you pay your money, you take your choice. But going back to Ismail, I think he's only ever managed 12 months at one club. And I think even then it was on 13 months that he managed there. John Eustace wanted an extended contract. That was part of his moans. Surely I'm demonstrating my worth. The club wouldn't give him one, so they bring Ismail in and give him a 3.5-year contract. Go figure. Now, the cynic in me suggests that Valérien Ismail speaks French and Rudy Gostined speaks French.
Oh, right.
And that might have something to do with it, where they can actually talk to each other about football. Now, I've seen stranger reasons for managing appointments, I have to say that. Yeah. But I think to say that we were underwhelmed, but let's give him a chance. How many chances does a new manager have to take over a team that's in the playoffs? Not many. Well, not many at all. So you were hoping that just don't break anything. Just send them out and have them doing the same thing that they've been doing. We get a last-minute equaliser against Norwich in his first game, which feels like a win in the circumstances. And then we can't win for toffee. We go 2-0 down at home to Sheffield Wednesday, and everybody's like, oh, this is just... But then we show some fight and endeavour in the second half to pull that back to 2-2. Now, again, you pays your money, you takes your choice. Either Ismail came up with the world's best half-time talk and rejigged everything, or the player said, bollocks to this, we're not doing what you've told us to do, we're doing what we want to do, and we came back to 2-2. So you pays your money, you takes your choice. Saturday, we beat Luton away 1-0. We never won a league game at Luton, curiously. So that was the first time we'd ever won at Kenilworth Road in the league. And all of a sudden, you're sort of saying, well, at least we're safe from relegation. But ... As I go back to the points I made earlier, half the squad disappears in June. Who are they going to replace them with?
Yeah, but this is the thing. Like you said, it took him 7 games to win his first game, which as you said came against Luton last time out. I mean, you're talking about Rovers fans with other worries about the club, but was he already under pressure?
Yeah, I mean I'm trying to remember. It was the Sheffield Wednesday game, I think, where he got a yellow card from the ref, and the home fans were shouting "off, off, off" because the ref showed him a yellow card. So, there's something about his Gallic nature. Let's be obtuse and sort of say there's something about his aloofness that he's not made any attempt whatsoever to win over the fans. He's not. And in some respects, I kind of quite like that. It's kind of like, well, you're not going to decide my future. The guys in the boardroom are going to decide that. So I can give him grudging respect for that. But I went down to Portsmouth to watch us play appallingly and lose to a side battling against relegation. And at full-time whistle, he's straight off down the tunnel. No acknowledgement of the fans, not even a wave or anything. So there's none of that. There's no good PR coming out from Valérien Ismail. And it's just... I just think that we're on the road, we're on the rocky road here, and I think it's going to be really, really difficult for him to turn it round. Not impossible, but it needs an absolute overhaul in the summer of players that will play for him.
Yeah, but I mean, Gav, I don't know about you, because I've keep looking at the league, and I kept thinking, Blackburn are knocking about there, thereabouts there. Didn't really look too much at the form, but I thought, Blackburn are hanging around there, and based on what you've heard Ian say, everything you've heard him say, and the form that they've had, the run that they've had since, December. I mean, can you believe that Blackburn are still only 7 points adrift of the playoffs? And we'll get into it, but the next game against Millwall and win that, and you're 4 points behind. And it's amazing.
Come on.
But I mean, are you the same as me, Gav, where you've been like, Blackburn they're just there?
Yeah, well, they've hung in there. I guess it probably highlights the fact that outside of a handful of teams in the Championship, the majority of teams are much of a muchness. So you can go on a horrendous run of form and you don't really move too far because everyone's beating everybody. So everyone's taking point. It's it makes it the best league in the world, in my opinion, in terms of competitiveness. You can watch any game in the Championship. Plymouth played the other week and beat a team going for automatic promotion, and Plymouth are rock bottom of the table. And I just think it shows how great the Championship can be for neutral fans or anybody who's watching football in the Championship, that the games are so competitive. I mean, you talk about Luton. That was one of our best games this season. That was before they properly hit the bricks, wasn't it, Chris, when we went to Luton away. But that was a great win for us because we grafted and battled and we got the 3 points.
And they were good.
And they were fantastic. And as I look now, the second bottom of the league. So, I can kind of half understand why Blackburn's still hanging in, because they're all taking points off each other. I think having listened to what Ian said, though, I severely doubt they're going to get themselves back into any conversation there's probably too much room to make up now, but still, they're not kicking the arse off, really. It would take a horrendous run of results for some other teams, but
just to that point, if I may interject, it's very kind of you to indulge me in this rant. This is really good for my blood pressure. There was a table posted by, I think it's the BBC Match of the Day account on Twitter, as I still call it, this morning, which indicated that everybody in the Championship has got something to play for. And Blackburn Rovers in 10th place apparently have a 0.2% chance of finishing in the top 6. 0.2%. So it's that Jim Carrey meme, isn't it? So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah.
So technically, yes, there's a chance, but it needs to be such an extraordinary sequence of results. There are 3 teams in the middle, Swansea, Norwich and Sheffield Wednesday, that technically could get promoted or relegated still. Highly theoretical. But then you drop into the red zone, which starts in the 15th place. So from Queen's Park Rangers down, all of those teams are still under threat of relegation. Obviously, as you get down to the bottom 4, which is probably, or maybe 5, I think it's probably 3 from 5 at the bottom, isn't it? I think it's tightened up, as you say, with Plymouth winning and Derby winning and all the rest of it. But that's going to be quite an interesting finish. But yes, so it's 0.2% chance. So get your bets placed at the bookmakers now.
But come on, Ian. I mean, this might be immaterial to people listening because obviously we're doing this before the Good Friday games. But you've got Millwall.
Do you want to cover all 3 options? But you played really well yesterday and deserved the win. The draw was fluky. You must be upset at that defeat.
But you've got Millwall. If Coventry get beat, you're 4 points behind the playoffs.
That's what football fans thrive on, isn't it? That's what. Yeah. If only with that last minute penalty had gone in. If only. Yeah. That's what we thrive on. We ain't going up. We ain't going down. Now, at the beginning of the season, with 4 games to go, I would have shaken hands on that and said, "Yeah, I'll take that." Based on last season, that's the harsh reality. But as we said, if I hadn't seen such riches, we were really up there again, and we've thrown it away.
But based on everything we said, the bad runs, the fact that you've surprisingly still close, is that not even more frustrating? The fact that if they're just, instead of bought that player from Plymouth, they'd bought that striker who might get you 10 goals.
Yes,
that might have just pushed you in.
Can we clip this and send it to the boardroom at Blackburn Rovers? Yes, it's incredibly frustrating. That in a nutshell is where I think a lot of Rovers fans are, because you're constantly looking and sort of saying, well, it's the extent of our ambition not to get relegated, and I think that's what it is right now. I think that is the extent of our ambition. Simply not to get relegated, because I think even the loss of the Championship TV money would be critical at this point. I think that would be incredibly difficult.
I mean, Gav, again, listening to this, imagine if Sunderland could win a game and then be 4 points off the playoffs. What would it be like for us?
Well, if you think back to 2 years ago when we snuck into the playoffs on the final day.
Oh yes,
that was a simple.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Dagger to the heart.
I mean, we with a handful of games left, we kind of flew in there. I mean, this point in the month, so April 15th, we played Birmingham and we beat them 2-1 at the Stadium of Light. I remember Amad Diallo scoring an absolute screamer in that game. We went from 10th to 9th. Then we got a draw with Huddersfield. We went up to 8th. Then we beat West Brom, we went up to 6th, then we dropped after a draw with Watford down to 7th, and then on the final day beat Preston, and a mad sequence of results occurred, and Blackburn were involved on that day, and we snuck into the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, we've kind of experienced that feeling of it being fairly impossible and sneaking in, but yeah, I mean, I don't see it personally,
No,
unfortunately.
I did some research for one of our pods, and there's only one season in the last 5 that a team has got into the playoffs with a points tally that doesn't begin with a 7. And that season was you guys.
Yeah.
And we had the same number of points, but goal difference did for us. So, yes. That's classic Blackburn Rovers.
But like I say, it's probably a bit of a stretch. And by the time this goes out, of course, because we're planning to post this first thing on Sunday morning, I'm pretty sure you'll know that you can definitely not get into the playoffs by that point.
Well, let's cover those off. Yeah, well, our performance at home to Millwall was no better than we expected. Of course, we're going to lose it. I thought we deserved a draw on the whole lot. Who'd have thought it? A win.
Well, like we said earlier with the Sunderland fans, it's a hope I can't stand, isn't it?
Yes,
that's what it comes down.
It's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, but just looking specifically, we've looked at form, but I was looking at the win at Luton. That was a second away win in 11 games on the road since mid-December. And when I looked into it a bit closer, only 5 teams have scored fewer goals on their travels, and 5 teams have conceded less away from home. So
tell me something I don't know. Yes.
Yeah. So scoring goals, that's the issue.
Scoring goals, has been Eustace had the defence really well organised, and that run of 6 consecutive wins, I think I'm right in saying they were all by a single goal. One of those wins was a horrendous offside goal that Dom Hyam scored at Middlesbrough. So, you always remember the ones that are disallowed for you. You don't remember the ones that are given wrongly for you. Well, I remember that one because I remember thinking, bloody hell, he's yards off. Surely the lines was, he's not putting his flag up. Crikey, we scored a goal. So that we rode our luck. And there's so much data available now, isn't there, in football around XG and all the rest of it, whether you believe in it or not. But I think, in the good old days, you used to sort of say we murdered them. We had loads of shots, we had loads of chances. Now you can look at XG and you can see that if you're winning games with an XG of 0.2 or 0.3, at some point that's going to catch up with you. You can't always ping one in from 30 yards into the top corner against the run of play and nick the 3 points. And so effectively what we've got in the second half of the season is kind of like a regression to the mean, where we've just been sucked back into what our natural position is. Did it have to be like that? No, it didn't, but that's what's happened. I think events have just caught up with us. We never really were a genuine top 6 side. We were outperforming, but having got off to that good start, if they'd recruited well in January, I think we could have carried on outperforming. That's the point.
Yeah. You mentioned 2 links in the Blackburn squad already, Danny Bart and Dion Sanderson. And I was surprised when I looked into it that Danny Bart's played well over 30, or he's played just over 30 league games this season, I think, which surprised us a bit.
He's been terrific, I have to say. He's been absolutely terrific.
Those 2 been good for you?
Well, Danny Bart has. I think Dion Sanderson, I would describe as a capable squad player. I don't think you want him starting every match. But he's a handy player to have around to fill in at centre-back or right-back, perhaps. But Danny Bart, he's made a mockery of that decision not to give him a 2-year contract 2 years ago. And if he's not offered terms at the end of the season, I'd be very surprised, because I think he'll find it very difficult to get equivalent or better for no money. And at the moment, we're very short-term in our view. It's kind of like, well, he'll do a job for us this season, we'll worry about next season at the end of this season. So I think Bart ticks a lot of boxes. We should have Scott Wharton coming back from injury, so he wouldn't be expected to play 30 or 35 games next season. So I think that would suit him and it would suit the club. So he's been excellent, yeah.
So it's a shame to hear that about Dion Sanderson, Chris, isn't it? Because when he played for us, we had I saw a Premier League defender there, and I think injuries and things have just got the better of him, maybe. And it's a shame to hear that about him.
He may be one of those, if he's given a decent run of games, because obviously he wasn't playing at Birmingham, that's why they're willing to let him go. And he wasn't ever going to force himself into our first 11 without injuries. He was brought in as cover, and he's been capable, not ripped up any trees. He's not made any absolute howling mistakes. But equally, he's not come in and demonstrated, oh wow, this guy's got something. We should start him. Yeah. If he did stay at Rovers and he played 10 games on the trot, then you might be able to see something in him. But I don't think he will stay at Rovers.
You know what, Gav, I was going to say exactly the same thing to you, because League One, he was a bit of a Rolls Royce in League One when he was here on loan. And I remember us being desperate to sign him, and actually quite a lot was disappointed we didn't sign him in the end.
Yeah, he was a fantastic player for us, and he had a bit of everything. He had pace, he was strong, he was good in the air. He was versatile. He could either play on the right of a back three or through the middle if you needed him to. So, yeah, I always thought Dion Sanderson would go on to do quite well. It's just a shame that he hasn't. And I think it's probably more of a sign of, not getting the right opportunities maybe at Birmingham, but also injuries, because he was injured a lot when he played for us. And that can be the difference between a player who genuinely, we all thought he could probably play Premier League football if things go right for him, to him being a championship squad player.
Yeah, struggling to nail down a place somewhere.
Yeah. But then Danny Bart as well, it's nice to hear he's still doing quite well. And, as a player who Sunderland fans have a lot of time and affection for. And I think the only reason we really let Danny Bart go was just because we were trying to reduce the average age of the team, bring in players we could actually develop ourselves. And he was effectively replaced in the squad by Dan Ballard, who's a lot younger, but obviously still a very capable player. And I'm glad to hear he's doing well in the Championship because, somebody who we had a lot of time with. I think we were lucky to get him in League One. We got him when he was at Stoke. In Stoke, he was one of the highest earning players at Stoke. And they just wanted him off the wage bill, and we cut a good deal. We got him for free. He came down to play for us in League One. He was happy to come and was part of the team that got us promoted. And I think, in the future, fans will look back at Danny Bart as one of those players who got us back to where we eventually needed to be, which would be, a stable club competing. And still got a lot of time for him.
Yeah, player of the season when he left as well.
That's right.
Just to get an outsider's view, Ian, obviously on Sunderland, it's always nice to hear other people kind of, because we live in the bubble, so we kind of, we kind of hear it all the time. But, we're the club who's tried to hang on to those three with parachute payments at the top. So how's your view of Sunderland's season?
Well, the only thing I can say is looking at the league table and when we played you at Ewood, I thought the game at Ewood was probably, it's got to be up there in the top 3 most entertaining fixtures of this season, if not top, because I felt that it ebbed and flowed. Each side had a period of play where they were on top. The goals sort of like pinged in, and you take a lead, you give it up, and come back with a late equaliser. I was impressed with you this season. I was impressed with the sort of the speed of your passing and movement, and I thought you were a very energetic side and carried a threat up front, which we struggled to sort of like snuff out. But I did enjoy the game, and I felt a draw was probably a fair result. I'd shake hands on a draw now, I've got to be honest, for Monday, but who knows what team you will put out and who knows what team we will be able to put out, because we are down to the Harry Redknapp bare bones, I think it's fair to say. So the average age of our bench could be quite interesting on Monday. If they have to have their nappies changed at half-time and fresh milk delivered, then you know why.
Well, last time out, you won 5-1 at the stadium.
I was there, and I have to say, it's amazingly, it's only the second most enjoyable visit to the Stadium of Light, because a few weeks later I went to see Bruce Springsteen, and I enjoyed that immensely, even despite the driving rain. So yes, 2 visits to the Stadium of Light last year.
It's a shame Martin's not here, because he's the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan in the world.
Exactly. It was my wife's sort of like she sort of like dragged me into the cult. I have to say, I do enjoy it. I think as a live performer, he's absolutely amazing. But it was a foul evening. I'm amazed it went ahead because there was so much water on that stage. How nobody was electrocuted. It's an absolute, well, at least we're going to be here when he dies on stage. Well, that's a bit morbid.
But you mentioned you'd be happy with a draw, but are you expecting to take? Or how much does it depend on that result against Millwall?
It doesn't matter at all, because we are down to bare bones. So it's kind of, well, we need to come up with some tactical formation and wizardry to sort of like counteract Sunderland and Millwall. Yeah, we are down to probably 12 or 13, I would say, demonstrable first team players, and then the squad is packed out with people who are on the way up, kids bluntly, who we're expecting to deliver too much at this stage of the season. I think you'll beat us. And I think we'll draw with Millwall. But our season's over. As we sort of said, 0.2 chance that the BBC have calculated. I'm surprised it's as high as that. I wrote my column for the local paper yesterday, which will be published later on today, and I sort of said, that's it, the season's over. And then I read that table that said 0.2 chance. So I'm waiting for the first smart ass to quote that in the below the line comment. Oh, season's over, is it? We've still got 0.2 chance. Yeah, you're right. We've got a 0.2 chance.
And Gav, I mean, we talked about the manager's comments about our running. How important is it? I mean, is it important at all to look at results, or are we just trying to look at what he's doing in terms of, rotating the squad out and giving people a rest and maybe a little bit about shape and things like that?
Yeah, I think it maybe depends on how Friday goes. And of course, again, we'll know by the time this goes out how Friday goes at Bristol City, because that's a game against an opponent who we might feasibly play in the playoffs. And, for morale purposes, that might make a difference. However, I just get the impression that the manager doesn't particularly care what the fans think on this. He has a plan. He's going to win at it. And the plan is to rest and rotate. I think by the time we play Blackburn, we'll be looking to maybe integrate some of the players we fancy for the semi-finals. So I would imagine Joe Bellingham will probably play on Monday. I would imagine Enzo Lefebvre will probably play on Monday. That's not a good thing for Blackburn, Ian, because those are probably two of our best players, and we've kept
them. I recognise those names.
Yeah, we've kept them out of the way for the last few weeks just to, make sure that they're fit for the end of the season. But look, I think ultimately, if we win, fantastic. It's going to lift morale. It's going to bring people back on board with what we're doing. It's going to give us confidence heading into the end of the season. But in my opinion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. This one I view very much like the Swansea game, in that we just have to get through it, try not to have any more injuries. That's the end game for us at this point. I think what you're going to see is a ramp up. As we've talked about on here a lot recently, it almost feels like pre-season in that you have 6 or 7 games in pre-season where you start off in a manner where you just kind of play 2 different teams. You rotate players in and out, and then if people are injured, they maybe get a little bit more time off. And then just before the season starts, you have that big home game where you're playing a European team or whatever, and that's the team you're going to play for the first game of the season pretty much. And I think that's the way we're approaching it. I think by the time we play Queen's Park Rangers, we'll see exactly what we're going to be doing for that first semi-final in the playoffs. So this is one of the warm-up games for that period, if you're viewing it that way. I think we've just got to try and get through it, but also bring in some players who maybe need some minutes and look to take out players who've played a lot recently who maybe need a bit of a rest, because as we pointed out on the news pod that we did on Thursday, Chris, we've still fielded the likes of Wilson Isidore, Dan Neil, Trey Hume, Chris Mepham, Luke O'Neill and Anthony Patterson in virtually every game recently. They've not been rotated out where others have. So these Easter games, I would imagine, will be an opportunity to change things about a little bit more and see some of those lads get a rest. So yeah, what I'm hoping for is just not a repeat of this fixture last year where we got absolutely trounced.
I can promise you that, my friend.
I tell you what, you can't. It's Sunday.
I can. I absolutely can.
Is this like one of those things sort of where, like, both of us are on the same thing here, and it's like,
even if we were to win, it would be with a 90+3 penalty wrongly awarded or something that's deflected in on the keeper's backside. We don't score goals. We just do not score goals. So our best hope is to keep it to a goalless draw.
Yeah, well, we'll see, I guess. But yeah, I'm just taking my time, Chris. I'm pretty confident that we can stroll through to the last couple of games and then ramp up for the playoffs. And that's, if people don't like that, then I've seen a lot of people say, well, I pay me money to be entertained. Maybe don't go on Monday then, because there is that option. If people turn up thinking that Sunderland are just there to entertain them, I've been a Sunderland.
I think the easy challenge back to that would be, what if 3 or 4 of your players get injured on Monday, putting in full-blooded tackles and they're out of the playoffs? I mean, you absolutely wouldn't want that. I mean, frankly, I'm hoping you pick the guy who runs the hot dog concession and a couple of tea ladies just to err on the side of caution. And 8, 12-year-olds, that would work for me. But no, if we were in your position and we were picking a full-strength team, and it was the same team game after game, I'd be questioning the manager's wisdom, particularly with 2 games over Easter. I mean, Easter is that classic time where you see so many muscle injuries in the second game over Easter because players haven't recovered.
Yeah, well, they'll be entertained at Wembley if we come out on the winning side, I'm sure. But just out of interest, I don't think you were, but are you planning on making the trip up to Sunderland?
No, I did it last year, as I sort of say. So that was one of my long distance away days, which I thoroughly enjoyed despite the weather. So no, I shall be curled up on my sofa watching it, I'm afraid. So yes, fair weather fan.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. But I think that's a good place to leave it today. So thank you very much, Gav. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you very much, Ian. It's been an absolute pleasure. And obviously, other than the result on Monday, I hope you have a very good Easter weekend, mate.
That's very kind of you. And it's been a pleasure being in your company, gentlemen.
Good stuff. And when you, when you win your last 4 games and end up in the playoffs, I'm sure we'll speak again in a few weeks.
Get me back on to preview the semi-final of the playoffs. Yeah.
That's it. Brilliant. Well, thanks again, Ian. Cheers. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. We've got loads of pods coming thick and fast, of course. So like and subscribe and all that, because Gav keeps telling us it makes a difference. If not, keep a look out at Roker Report for whatever is next, because I'm sure one will be dropping with a rate we're going at the moment. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Alright, we are going where?
Back to school shopping.
This is the Playoffs for Parenting, aka getting ready to get back to school.
As we get ready for back to school,
doesn't matter your income, your race, your background, whether you have a disability or not.
Our public schools are a place where all kids feel like they belong.
My child.
My children. My family.
My friends' kids.
My community.
All students.
All students.
All students belong in a great public school.
Let's get ready for back to school at NEA.org/backtoschool.